Welcome, Guthrie Govan. Thank you for coming. You're very kind. And I can thank anyone in advance who's still here at the end for staying. I mostly propose to wing this because I've been doing the Asia thing for the last month or so. I haven't played any of what I call the forbidden music, the crazy instrumental guitar stuff. So I've brought a few backing tracks along. I'm hoping I can remember how the tunes go. If not, bear with me. It's jazz if it goes wrong. And like Adam said earlier, really, yeah, if you guys have any questions, sock it to me. Because I'd rather we kind of all got engaged in this and had a good chat about guitar playing rather than me just standing up here trying to do circus tricks for an hour and a half. I think anything more than 10 minutes of circus tricks, it starts to get a bit old. Right, I'm now going to turn my back to you, look at my list of tracks and pick one. I think there's probably no better way to start than by playing you some of my horrible music. Oh, you're too kind. Uh, okay, that was a track called Fives, which should have come out on my solo album about 8 years ago, but I worked very slowly. Um, Called Fives because it's in 5/8, and I don't know how many serious kind of guitar nerds we have out here, and how many of you are just curious. Is anyone aware of a CD compilation called The Alchemist? That's a no. Oh, good man. I like you. The Alchemist was brought out by this small, well-meaning record label called Liquid Note Records. And they summoned together a scary roster of guitar players. There are all sorts of fantastic guys on there, like Bumblefoot being one that springs to mind, Todd Duane, guys like that. And it was the first time, shortly after they released that, the first time I ever got a royalty check for something that I'd written that had actually been put out on a CD. And I'm trying to do a quick exchange rate here. I think $4. To this day, I've received $4 for that tune. There's more beats in the bar than there were bucks in the check, so that was upsetting. Any questions? The obvious one being, why? Why did you do that? But any questions from any one of you guys about anything that might have happened in that tune?
You seem to employ a wide variety of picking techniques in there besides just the normal. Could you explain yourself?
I'm sorry. Okay, my take on picking. God, I could really get into this picking thing. I've looked into a lot of different picking techniques, and I think it's foolish just to swear by one and stick with one approach. I don't think there's one picking approach that's best for everything. And to kind of over-glamorize this thing that we all do, the guitar playing, look to Bruce Lee. Why was Bruce Lee great at what he did? He would steal things from all these different disciplines. There were so many different martial arts rolled into what that guy was doing. And that's what made him foolproof, I think. He didn't just stick with the one way of doing things. My take on picking in general, for anyone who wants to get their picking better, I think the best place to start is with standard alternate picking. Because it's nature's metronome, the idea that your hand's just going down, up, there's generally going to be a down on the beat. Having something as simple as your hand just ticking away like that, it's easier to keep going than it is to stop almost. So it's quite a natural motion, no tittering at the back. But I think it's quite a rhythmic way of playing the guitar. And I would recommend everyone gets their head around alternate picking first, and then starts to look at the forbidden stuff like sweeping. Everyone tackles this stuff differently. Someone like Al Di Meola just will not sweep as a matter of principle. He considers it cheating. I point at Frank Gambale and say, go and do that then. There's a reason to do everything, isn't there? Every technique has a purpose. But I think generally what I'm doing when I'm doing the faster... that kind of stuff where it's quite scalar. Seems to me the easiest way to pick it is alternately. I'm sure everyone here has gone through all those exercises like that. Although, you know, the one finger per fret exercises. Does that ring bells to anyone? Have we all done that one? One of those things we all get told to practice, and it actually sounds really bad. It's the opposite of music. But at least it trains this hand. I found that the sweeping thing for me almost started by accident. Even the blues guys amongst us will recognize licks like... I'm thinking in particular at the end of Whipping Post by the Allman Brothers. It sounds like one of them has just discovered that lick and they love it. About 20 times in a row. So I think we all know that one. If you're playing one note on a string and then one note on the neighbouring string, then one note on the next neighbouring string, then the lazy thing to do is obviously the right thing to do, just do it all with one downstroke. Now, just as a listener, I don't really like the texture of it when a guitar player is just doing... The thing about that, if it was difficult to do, I shouldn't be able to have a conversation with you at the same time, right? I could go on, you get my point. That kind of becomes a mechanical thing. I think that's the scale patterns playing you, rather than you using the scale patterns as a tool. And what I personally like to hear in this kind of playing is when people mix it up. Some of it's scalar, some of it's arpeggio based, some of it's wide interval based. So I've always thought it was worth trying to keep the picking hand thing open, so it could go from that machine gun kind of morph into a sweep without anyone hearing where the join was. And hopefully that gives you more options when you're improvising, rather than thinking, right, I will now do my alternate picking trick. Now I'll stop, pause for breath, do my sweeping trick. I think if you can roll it all together, it's going to sound less like guitar playing and more like music. Well, that'll always be the dream. Sorry, did that explain the kind of thing you were angling for? Seeing as it's cropped up, I should probably have a quick chat about the mechanics of picking. I've seen a lot of students, I've done a lot of teaching myself, although not in these shores. I see a lot of students with the same problems. One of them is they assume picking is going to be difficult, so they tense up. And tensing up is a really bad idea. You're just wasting calories. You're going to collapse halfway through the gig if you're really tense. If you tell yourself picking is easy and that you can be relaxed about it, that's one thing. Another important point is there's no point moving any further than you have to. I get this a lot at trade shows. People come up and instead of saying, oh, that was a lovely song, Guthrie, I'm going to be singing that one in the shower for weeks, they say, wow, your speed, your accuracy, this is fantastic. How do you do it? Your hands must be moving so fast. And I always reply, no, my hand's not moving any faster than yours. All it's doing is moving less and changing direction more frequently. There's not a huge amount of motion there, so hopefully it's quite efficient. That's one key. Another thing I've spotted a lot is it's a lot easier to do that stuff if you're anchored to the body of the guitar in as many places as possible. That's what this bit's for. Kind of nail yourself to that, metaphorically. And for me, I think my picking hand's kind of a little bit different from most people's, though having watched John McLaughlin, I think he does it similarly. Rather than that kind of approach, I'm fonder of turning the wrist round like that, so the part of my hand that's resting on the strings is there, where your thumb stops and your palm starts. And that way, all the way from here right down to the pick, I can feel contact with the surface of the guitar. So it doesn't matter if the guitar's moving around, I still feel at one with the instrument, baby, which I think is a good thing. Next picking, stop me if this gets boring. The next picking thing that lots of people miss out on is having too much pick sticking out or using the wrong pick. I'd say if you want to play loads of notes, have a thick pick. If you don't believe me, imagine trying to write with a rubber pencil and then trying to write the same thing with a pencil that's rigid, that's not making movements of its own volition, it's only doing what you tell it. You've got a lot more control if the pick isn't flapping around in the breeze. And my one other point would be, ouch, unintentional pun there. I think a pick with a point can save you a lot of work. If you've got a really rounded pick, it's going to take you longer to get that tip one side of the string to the other, I think. If it's pointed, you've got the option of either playing flat on the string, so the pick is in line with the string, or playing more at an angle. And it makes a huge difference, just tonally. The heavy metal sound. So that sounds uncharacteristically pleasant, if I may say so. It's got a certain warmth to it, and without touching any controls or anything, I can go from that to... It almost sounds like a different guitar. You can humour me and nod, if you will, but it sounds altogether angrier than... The whole EQ's changed, and that's what happens when you go from holding the pick flat to tilting it round a little bit. So you're playing with the edge of the pick rather than the whole surface of it. I look at it as something that's cheaper than buying a pedal, that opens up this whole world of getting new sounds. And that kind of helps explain why, it's one of the many reasons why every player sounds different. It's all about how you attack the note. I'm guessing some of you are probably here because you went on the internet and read something about this Guthrie guy. He plays loads of notes, he sweeps, he taps. But really, confession time, what I really care about is trying to make a note sound good. If you can't make a note sound good, don't bother playing it, just leave a gap. That's my hippie philosophy on it all. But my take is it's worth experimenting with every bit of, every possible angle. And if you watch the late and very, very great Sean Lane doing his thing, he actually had an angle the other way round. The pick was tilted that way, which I find really odd, but anyone who's heard him will agree it worked for Sean Lane. In my world, it's all about alternating between the flat of the pick when you want the warm sound and the edge when you want something with a bit more bite, a bit more anger. Those of us who like playing with far too much gain might think it doesn't apply to you. I have a dual rectifier, I can play anyhow. It still makes a difference. If I fire up the sound of death and then you can go from to, and with that second one, I think I'm a good 30% more Gary Moore than I was first time, because even if you just put your pick like that without playing a note, well, believe it or not, a noise like that is at the start of every note you play. It can either be that one or that one. So if you want to sound angry, I think that's one key. Oh, how much can you talk about a pick? I'm sorry, guys. Any other questions? I trouble you to use the microphone.
Talk about tapping.
Lord, I have stereo questions. Okay, seeing as you got up, what was yours? We'll try and field both of these.
Actually, I just want to request a tune. Can you play, or you can answer this question, then can you play sevens?
Good Lord, you got a file on me, man. Okay, sevens will happen at some point.
Okay, cool.
Did I talk about tapping and then play a tune, or should I play a tune and then talk about tapping? Let's have a vote. Let's be proactive. What do you guys want? Tune? Tune it is. It says here, the winner is track 4 with 55 points. Remember this bit. Okay. So in answer to my own question, no, I can't remember that. But, I had a go, didn't I? You all saw it. Okay, the tapping question was probably quite well timed, thinking about it. Now I can practice that lick so I don't screw it up at future clinics. And there's a nice follow-on theme after all that picking ranting I was doing earlier. What do we all know about tapping? It probably all started in this city, didn't it? Kind of late 70s, when everyone decided that you had to do that. And as with so many good things, everyone did it to death. People who didn't understand the point of it did it, and threw away all their bluesy roots, forgot what proper playing was about, and devoted themselves purely to that. That's why everyone ended up hating tapping, I think. I've heard tales of people auditioning for a band, and the second this hand reaches over there, before the people have even heard what the musical purpose of the tapping is, they've not got the gig. They blew it by doing that sad 80s metal thing. And visually, I don't know, I think we have to do a lot to get tapping back to its deserved status as a valid way of playing the instrument. There is a stigma attached to it, I think, but there needn't be. To me, tapping's just what you do when you wish your parents had the same surname before they got married, and you just don't have enough fingers to play a lick that you want to do. It's another way of playing notes. So I would urge anyone who thinks it's some kind of headbanger's trick to disillusion yourself of that immediately and just treat it as a musical tool. You can use it to do whatever you want. So having defended it like that, suppose there's a few different ways you can do it. We all know the Eddie thing, don't we? Tell you what, though, the amount of people I've seen who can't make that sound good. All you have to remember with tapping to get it to work for you is that this finger has to do everything that the fingers on this hand take for granted. If you're going to tap the note, tap it like you mean it. This could be the last note you ever tap. You could get hit by a bus. Tap it with conviction. It will come out loud and convincing. And then when you finish with that note, you need some kind of flicking motion. It's not enough just to take your finger off the string. Or you get that. That's the guitar center on a Saturday afternoon, isn't it? Okay. I brought out some demons there. I do apologise. But before you worry about speeding stuff up and learning scary tricks, I think it's worth just caring about whether you're making the notes sound good or not. But can you do that over a wide dynamic range? All right, because if you can only play it at one dynamic level, then it's not really music. That lick owns you. You're not really free to use it like a real musician, which is a crying shame, I think. So the dynamics thing is as important with what looks like a circus trick as it is when you're playing blues licks. Just my humble opinion. Okay, from that, there's a number of directions you can take it. You kind of go the Steve Vai route. One of the things I remember being struck by when I first heard Steve Vai around the time of Eat 'em and Smile, which I'm hoping we've all heard. For me, it's kind of the standard rock guitar version of something by Shakespeare. It's required listening, that album. But a lot of his tapping, rather than the triadic thing, it seemed like it was more of a scalar thing. It was like a scale fingering, but with more fingers than you would have thought possible. And I was quite taken with that. It seemed there were two ways. You can imagine Guthrie the teenager trying to puzzle through all this scary heavy metal stuff. It all happened to me so suddenly. Going from a world of blues and jazz to suddenly hearing guys like Steve Vai and Yngwie. And it all happened at school over the space of a week. I've got to reassess everything I thought about the instrument. So anyway, there I am at home, trying to figure out what these guys are doing just by listening to the tapes. And my potted summary of Steve Vai's tapping at the time was, okay, there's two ways you can do it. That way there, where this finger's kind of scared to get too far away from this hand, because then it would need a map. And then the other way, which is the exact opposite, where this finger kind of stays still. And I assumed at the time, I stand by this now, that this hand kind of learns a separate shape The closer it is to being 1 fret wide, the happier you're going to be. And then this hand wanders around like it normally would. And the rest of it, I think, is just syncopation. Kind of not forgetting where you are, not forgetting which hand's turn it is next. Of course, one of the other directions you can take that in is the 8-finger thing. Good time for me to talk with my pick in my mouth. I don't claim to be an authority on the 8-finger thing. I believe you have the leading authority in this building. He was here last time I visited. I really have nothing to add to what TJ's doing. But the thing that bothered me, as I explained earlier, I've got this kind of blues gremlin tucked away in here. I never really want to forget about all the bluesy, rocky stuff, the core of rock guitar playing, the history of it. And for me, the deliberate 8-finger thing seems so detached from the rest of the playing we do. It almost feels like a different instrument. And I don't like the idea. Personally, it feels awkward for me to say, hang on a minute, I'm going to assume the position. All right, I mean, people who do that and sort of focus on that technique, they're a great advert for it. They can clearly do stuff that you can't play any other way. And I guess I used to look into stuff like that, which is basically ripped off from Jennifer Batten, the idea of, say, playing 2 pentatonics, and then you can see the logic behind having all your fingers. You're not really going to get that kind of speed any other way. But then it doesn't really segue into anything else that you want to play. So my kind of cheap compromise is just to use some of your fingers. So you can do that, but your pick's still there if you need it. All right, and that way, it's all about trying to join everything together so it all feels like you playing, rather than now I will showcase my picking, now I will showcase my tapping. Sorry if this is all a bit philosophical, but that's kind of how I look at it. And in an attempt to be more specific and helpful, those 2 fingers work together really well. That's the middle and the ring. These 2, oddly enough, the middle finger and the little finger, seem to work pretty well together. Those 2, no. I read a piano book once, and it explained that the reason everyone's little finger is bad is because it shares a tendon with the ring finger. I'd happily believe that, except I've seen Paul Gilbert play, and nearly everything he does is 1, 3, and 4. And it didn't really slow him down, did it? So I guess you really can train your hands to do whatever you like, but me personally, those 2 fingers on that hand, that's just too much like hard work. Given the option, I would use those 2, because they're clearly better. You know, they're longer, they're thicker, they've tapped more notes in their lifetime. But those 2 work better than you might expect. And the rest of it with tapping is just trying to visualize an extension to whatever shape this hand is doing. I try and think in small units. This is more about improvising than it is about tapping. I like the idea of your licks not being too long. You've got some monster lick that's kind of 4 bars long or something like that. As soon as you start playing it, I think you're committed to that lick. You have to see it through to the end, and then you need another trick. If your licks are kind of 4 notes long, but not in any particular order, that gives you so much more freedom to jumble all your ideas up, almost an infinite amount of times, and you're in less danger of repeating yourself. If you think about it, that's what blues rock guys do, isn't it? Their whole vocabulary. I don't know if we have any shredders here who have gone to a blues jam one night and they've got out their scariest licks and nobody really cares. And then this drunken blues guy turns out and just gives it a bit of that and everyone's loving it. And you're thinking, what went wrong? My lick was much better. I think the thing with, this is particularly true with self-taught players, which I'm going to plead guilty to that one, utterly self-taught. They treat improvising more like talking. And it's the same kind of thing. A lot of improvising you can view in vocal terms. If you try and memorize a speech or kind of lines for an audition or something like that, the fact that you've tried to memorize this big clump of information means you're in danger of it going wrong. Whereas if you just talk naturally and say the stuff you'd normally say when you're not on camera or not being assessed or not having to make a speech at the wedding or whatever, you're a lot more at ease. You don't stumble over your words as much, and you're not in any danger of forgetting anything, because your licks are things like, if you know what I mean, or yeah, I guess, or whatever. It's not a whole paragraph. And these smaller ideas, you can store so many more of them. So I'll try and do that with the tapping thing, rather than just memorize some monstrous lick that takes a week to learn and 2 seconds to play. And just keep it small, just trying to remember a few kind of shapes with this hand that seem to connect with what I'm doing with that hand. Oh, I know what I can do. Seeing as I just played sevens, you might be interested in that lick. Anyone? Cool. 3 people are interested in my lick. Excellent. The deal with that was, that's it. So even with that, it sounds like one of those 8-finger tricks, but my pick's still there when I need it. The idea there is you're kind of playing... Ooh, that's the one. A major 7th arpeggio there. Just E flat major 7, the chord of love. But I'm breaking it up, so this hand's playing a 5th interval there, 22nd on the E string, 20th on the B string. And then this hand's playing the 2 notes of the chord that I missed out the first time. What's that? 18th and 16th on the E and B respectively, so. That's kind of fun because every note's on a different string, but you don't have to pick anything. We all hate cross-picking, right, because it's not easy. But I think with something like that, the notes have a very detached and distinct sound. And it's one of those things you can practice even when you haven't got a guitar. It's something you can do when you're waiting for a bus for 10 minutes. You know, it's all... You can do it on your leg or a table or whatever. It's all about just getting those fingers rhythmically acclimatized to whatever the lick is. And once they're comfortable with that, you just put them on the fretboard and they'll do the walking. So if anyone's curious, this is just to give you a general idea. I don't want to brainwash you with note-for-note licks, because amongst other things, I'd hate to meet all you guys at some NAMM show in the future and you all sound like me. That'd be hideous. But the shape is basically, with this hand, so that'd be a 5th interval there, and then a 4th interval there on the B and G strings, and then another 5th interval there on the G and D, and then this hand is just mirroring it. Right, so you get, and then if you want, you can continue it. It gets a bit hairy here. How many fingers can you squeeze into one fret, right? But the cool thing about that is, if you wanted to, you could just move this hand down a fret and magically out pops another perfectly valid chord. This time it's a minor 7. So what I think would be cool is if anyone who's interested just takes the idea away, rather than trying to memorize that lick. Take the idea away, jumble it up a bit and try and do something that no one else has done. And then I'll see you at your clinic. All right, so... That's the deal with 7s. What else can you do with tapping? I'm just thinking on the spot here. Something I quite like to do is to try and get a tap note to sound like part of a blues lick. So you go that kind of thing. It sounds less deliberate, it sounds less premeditated to me, if you can just throw that in. The deal there is that you're trying to get some slides and bends in with the tap note, which confuses some players. I think all you have to remember, really, is just do it with conviction, do it like you mean it, and whenever you're moving that tapping finger from one fret to another, just keep pushing in. You don't want to lose the note. That actually hurt, that was too much. But, those kind of sounds there. It's all about just trying to get it away from that, because that's cool, but my laboured point is there's more to tapping than that. I mean, things like that. I mean, it's really a simple idea. We just slide the note down a fret and bend it up a semitone, or you can slide it down a semitone and bend it up more than a semitone. So your hand thinks the note's going down, but I suppose all I'm preaching is trying to think outside the box. If you've got a technique and you can do it, rather than just trying to speed it up, try and bend the rules a little bit. Look for some other application for it. Should I stop talking about tapping now? I think so. I have one other thing. How many people here do consider themselves shredders? God, I hate that word. But I don't hate you if you consider yourself to be one. Okay, my one tapping thing that people don't seem prepared for, they seem puzzled by it, and it's actually really easy, is what to do if you want to play an enormous arpeggio, but without learning very much. Does that sound good? That kind of idea. This is all in the spirit of laziness. If you want an arpeggio that covers as much neck as possible, you might have a pattern there. I mean, that's the classic Van Halen one, isn't it? It's just A minor, the second saddest of all keys. And then, because of the way the fretboard's laid out, you can play exactly the same deal, maybe up 2 frets on the D string, and then back to where you were for this other string, which also goes by the name of E. So long as you've got slightly less than 1 octave's worth of information. You can play big, bubbly arpeggios like that. It doesn't just have to be a major triad. You could do it with a minor 7, for instance. You could do it with, depending on how crazy you are, you might want to do a whole pentatonic scale like that. Wherever you go in your guitar playing career, don't forget the humble minor pentatonic scale. It's as great as it was the day you learned it. That kind of sound there. Or you might want to do it for this kind of thing. Try there. That kind of sound. But it's all the same deal. You just invent a shape using a combination of these 2 hands, and then just try and hide the joins when you're going onto another string. And once you've got that idea, you might get a bit crazy and think, oh, I wonder if it works with, I don't know, a whole tone scale. Yes, it does. Does it work with maybe a diminished half-whole kind of thing? And you find... And again, it's all the same kind of principle. You just slot the notes in and then rely on the laziness. So long as you're really comfortable at doing it on 1 string, you'll find that if you slowed that lick right down, any one of these, what you're thinking is, cool, I've got my shape, I am now playing my shape, this is easy, right now, panic, I've got to get that note right. And now I've got to line this up. Now you're playing this, you're coasting, piece of piss, not difficult in any way. That's another moment of panic. So I think if you slowed it right down and slowed your brain down, it would be panicking in short bursts rather than constantly all the way through the lick. Kind of like what a bird does when it's looking around, or a ballerina when they're doing that clever stuff. It's kind of sudden jerky movements of the head and then you don't get dizzy. Same thing when you're trying to get to the end of a lick. I think there's certain key points within the lick that you have to be aware of, maybe 2 notes before they happen. And in between, I mean, once your hand's memorised that shape, it should be able to do it anywhere. Does that make any sense? I'm hoping that's helpful. But in the words of Frank Zappa, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. So it only makes sense if you think about it for yourself as well. All right, that's enough tapping. Shall I play some more ugly music? What haven't we done? Okay, I know what we have to do. This is very cool. Okay, you've probably seen people change guitars with more dignity than that, but trust me, it was worth it. I met this guitar 2 days ago, and it does a very, very strange thing. It doesn't hum. How cool is that? They're genuine kind of Strat pickups. It's quieter than that guitar. Eerie, isn't it? I don't know what to tell you. This guy, Mr. John Sir, he knows what he's doing. I'll stop there. I'm not here to do a sales pitch, but I had to share that with you. But what I think we should do while this lovely blue thing is out is the third track on that CD, which is a bit of an epic. But The moral of that story is tune up before the track, not during the track. But, sorry about that. Right, I'm exhausted and confused. Any questions?
What kind of delay or loop or reverse pedal were you using earlier in that?
Ah, you're on to me. What I have here is an H2O liquid chorus and echo. That's not plugged in. A Boss DD6 pedal. That's not plugged in. And here, this is the fun pedal which intrigues you. This is a boomerang. There are a few companies that do gadgets along these lines. I think Roland or Boss do one called the Loop Station, which actually has a lot more features, but perhaps looks a little more fragile. What I liked about the boomerang was it seemed like it was made to military spec, and that's good because I drop things and spill beer on things and generally abuse equipment, and so far this thing has never let me down. For those of you who are not familiar with the kind of things loop pedals can do, they're great for those Hendrix moments. If you set it to reverse and mute what you're playing, you know. That kind of idea there. Sorry, it could have been louder, couldn't it? But you get the general idea. Which is cool, so long as you've got a second or two to kill at the start, because what you're actually doing there is recording, say, 2 seconds of you playing, but no one can hear it. Actually, you can slightly through this loop. Again, we're back to the guitar center. That's what it should sound like. So you might have this could be the length of your loop. So long as you've got a preset amount of time that the loop is going to last, you can kind of plan ahead. It's a really fun mind game to play with yourself, to try and jam along with a backing track where the chords change, and maybe set a bar's worth of reverse sample, so that you have to start playing over the next chord a bar before it happens. This is good training for jazz, because that's what all these jazz guys do as well. You get extra points in the world of bebop if you can start playing a chord tone from the next chord, maybe 1/8 note before it happens. That shows that you're really on the ball, I'm led to believe. But the other cool thing you can do with phrase samplers is really more of an intuitive thing. All right, and that's fairly... All right, I just made that up. It's there now for as long as I want. Yo, yo, GIT in the house. I could just... It's not going anywhere, so I might be struck with inspiration for another guitar part to stick over that. Or I might take some drugs and do this. Still there. Alright, so you can kind of while away half an hour doing your solo spot in Pizza Express. Probably not exactly like that. But I think it's just an inspirational thing to be able to capture a groove without having to fire up Cubase or whatever, without having to turn anything on, just having something that's part of your rig as standard. I love this thing. Partially for that. I mean, God forbid, I might actually write a song that had some chords in it instead of that one. It might be... Oh, actually, I think that one's been done, but maybe I want to practice playing over changes. It's there now. I didn't have to buy any backing tracks. And it's there. You can kind of get used to a song if necessary, maybe just 2 chords at a time. So I think that's another way that a gadget like this could be really helpful to you. If you feel it's out of your budget, I'm a student, I spend all my money on crack and guitars, whatever. Fear not, there's another solution. It's called a tape recorder that basically does the same thing. Any device that records yourself, I think, empowers you as a musician. It makes you able to practice all sorts of musical skills on your own without supervision, rather than just I don't know, memorizing a lick from a book or trying to play something faster. I think it's really important to try and write something, even if you don't think you're a songwriter. I think just trying to write a guitar part, because that's really what these things are all about. How many of us here want to play guitar for a living when this is all over? I'm relieved to hear it. It seems to me the whole system of priorities changes slightly as soon as you get out of an educational milieu. And you realise that you can't spend all day practicing anymore. That's one thing. And also, unless your band gets signed doing exactly what your band wants to do, generally you'll find nobody really cares what you think. Most of the work you get outside of your band doing your thing with your identity, it's people saying, what I want from you is something funky. No, that's too busy. Don't do that. Don't do that because your sound's wrong. Part of the deal is just taking guidance. And I think it's good to have practiced some kind of creative skill. So if someone says in a studio, maybe you've got a session gig, that part sucks, come up with something better or you're fired. You know, could you come up with a completely different part? So I think just jamming along with little grooves like that helps to exercise that part of your brain. And if you're kind of confined to your bedroom, desperate to get better at playing guitar but not quite sure how to do it, that's normally the area that suffers the most. Again, just my humble opinion. But that's about it for the boomerang, unless you like eerie backwards loops, or we need a so you could reverse that. It's a little confusing. Maybe if we speed it up, it'll be more fun. All right, so yeah, you can entertain 3-year-olds with it or whatever, but it's a serious creative tool. Don't remember the brand name, just remember the idea. If you go home with anything after all this, just think, I want some way of doing that stuff. That's given me some ideas. It doesn't necessarily mean buy that gadget. Okay. Any other questions? Please. Good man.
You use a lot of chromatic stuff when you're soloing. Can you talk about kind of incorporating that?
I'll try. To me, what I try and do with the chromatic stuff, this is probably all wrong. I'm sure this tape is going to be erased by everyone who works here and does it the right way. My philosophy with playing outside is kind of trying to get lost a little bit, but being able to find your way back. So I'm not a big fan of thinking, I want to go up a flat fifth and play this kind of arpeggio instead of that kind of arpeggio, and then I will have a really interesting outside sound. I'm more of an ear player, and I just try and hear something in my head and then find the notes from what my head is saying and make it come out through the guitar. Oh, no. This should work. Okay, let's try a bit harder. Hopefully that one sounded like I knew what I was doing. I'm not saying it was great, because it really wasn't, but it sounded like I meant to play most of those notes, whereas that hopefully sounded worse. If you can't tell the difference, I don't know what to say to you. But they both had wrong notes in there. I think it's all about where you put them. Think of, if you're new to all this playing outside thing, or the chromatic thing, let's just stay chromatic for now. Just take a shape you know and love. It might be a pentatonic, and then just explore the notes in between the extremities of that. That would be phase one. So instead of just doing that blues box, which just for the record is the best scale shape of all time, that one there, can't beat it. But you might then try and see what happens in the gaps, because you know that shape so well that if you start thinking, hang on, this is beyond chromatic, this is just bad, you know where the right notes live, you can save yourself. And it will have the maximum effects if you can save yourself at a significant point in the music, be it a point where there's a strong downbeat, or even just a point where it's the end of your lick and you want to hit a note extra hard. I think it's more comforting to your listener if you go off into jazz world but then land on something good at the end. However preposterous what you played before might have been, if you land on a note that's sweet enough, you'll get away with it 9 times out of 10. So maybe on the E string, you know you go. So you might just try and. Oh, I nearly did the Steve Morse fib there. That hurts. But that's kind of what I hear in a lot of Steve Morse's playing. That using the outside edges of a scale shape. And it still sounds in tune, even though a good, probably 70% of those notes are wrong, because there's contour to it. That sounds like it's in that key. And they're not great licks, but that's the idea. You're just not scared of the blank frets in between. The bit that I hear less people doing is kind of exploring the outside edges of the scale. So you get so that thing, I mean, that's just being silly. You might say, I'm going to play all the wrong notes outside. So you go. But God, doesn't it feel good when I play a right note for a change at the end? That's the beauty of it. If you go too far off into that, like full-on goatee and beret stuff, baby, I'm going to play a semitone out all night. You will empty the place. My general advice is don't do it unless it actually sounds good to you when other people do it. It's not just another thing that you can add to your bag of tricks. I think some players don't suit wrong notes, and some players just couldn't live without them. Figure out what fits into your musical vision before you start messing around with these forbidden notes. I just like them because I'm a bit messed up, and I like things that sound a bit ugly. I think that sounds okay, but I appreciate that most of the world doesn't. So if I'm just playing rhythm guitar in some Motown tribute band, that would not be the time to pull that lick out. It's also interesting to try and do that with 3-note per string scales. It's a shame I'm still in drop D. That's confusing me no end, but maybe something like that's the advanced guitar centerlet, isn't it? Hear lots of people doing that, rolling up and down those 3-note per string scales. But you can breathe a little bit of new life into those just by looking for a gap somewhere in there. And it seems to me if you've got one of those narrower shapes where you can still do one finger per fret, then you just fill in the gaps. And that works. It's more confusing when something like that. You've got 2 gaps on each string and not enough fingers. I think I speak for all of us there. There's no one really lucky with an extra digit. Okay, so do you pick that one or that one? And I can't quite explain why, but 9 times out of 10, if I have to pick one of those notes as a gap to fill in, I think that the later one generally sounds better to my ears. It's also easier to play, because that's your 1 finger per fret lineup. If you've got a stretch, you can either take this small rubbish finger, which is God's little joke at our expense, and stretch that out, or you can take this really good finger and stretch that one out. So that one not only feels more hand-shaped to me, but somehow sounds more musical. That's the alternative. Or maybe it's just because I've heard jazz tunes that go. Or maybe it's because you're approaching the highest note that small fragment of scale allows you to do, and maybe having a bit of chromatic tension right before the best possible note comes back. Maybe that's what it is. Am I bewildering people here? I'm bewildering me a little bit. But that's something you can experiment with, and you can sort of get a more fluid sound out of those scale shapes and still not really sound wrong. Hopefully, does that sound okay? That's kind of 25% wrong notes in there. But it's all about how you tell them. Okay, for more on this, you should really consult one of the serious jazz guys who work here. I know we have a few. I'm just this rock imposter, blues guy with a short attention span. Look at me that way. But sorry, any more questions? No. It's all over. Okay, maybe I should play some more disgusting music. What haven't we done yet? I'm going to change guitars briefly, bear with me, and then perhaps the second track on the CD would be some fun. And this one's called Erotic Cakes, which is also the name of my band that plays this stuff. And it's particularly unpleasant. Those of a faint disposition might like to do that. Sorry about that one. Like I said earlier, I just like ugly sounding notes sometimes. It's not a catchy ditty, but I think it's funny. That's a priority in my world. Any questions prompted by that unpleasant display? It would appear so.
Do you ever listen to Mars Volta?
Oddly enough, I was in a Virgin Megastore about a week ago and heard something and thought, what the hell is this? This is really good. And it was them. It's changed since the first album, hasn't it?
A little bit.
They were good then, now they're good and they're different.
Yeah, but I was just like listening to your playing. I think everybody else here would probably agree with me that like probably your odd timing signatures and your chromaticism is very familiar with their music now. Like I haven't heard anything like that besides them and like Primus and you. So if I was gonna ask you if you knew any other kind of like bands or artists that kind of have that similar kind of odd time signature chromatic sound.
Good Lord, off the top of my head, I don't know, there's lots of odd time signature stuff out there. I get told about prog bands every night after Asia gigs. People come up and say, oh, have you heard this band that you've never heard of? It just keeps happening. There's loads of people out there playing in 19/8 and stuff like that. One of my favourite rhythmic things is actually way outside the field of headbanging and metal and all that. I think one of the most rhythmically sophisticated human beings on the planet is Trilok Gurtu. He's this kind of Indian, classically trained drummer. I'm fairly sure, although he was classically trained, that he figured out the drum kit on his own, because he doesn't do it like other people. He kneels down, he hits the kick drum with a stick. So he's basically got 3 limbs on the go, and it sounds like 5 drummers all playing in different time signatures. And you might like to check out his live album with the band Crazy Saints, because that's kind of got all the elements of the prog thing and the chromatic thing, but it's got an Indian flavour instead of a metal flavour. So that's probably my favourite clever music of the moment. Are you into Bela Fleck and stuff like that? You want something like that, but more angular. With that, probably a bit of Zappa, because you've got to love your Zappa. If anyone doesn't like Zappa, we're going to fight later. And you're going to win, look at me. But what else? The Brecker Brothers, again, not metal, but very, very perverse note choices. And this time it's got kind of a funky edge rather than a world music edge. However, I think that the key is just try and steal elements from different things, not to have a formula. I want to buy something that's got this element and that element and the next element. I think the most you'll get out of listening to music, and it's just as important as playing music, probably more so, is just keep an open mind and kind of accept every bit of music you hear for what it is, and not to have any preconceptions about what's good about it. But to rewind Zappa, there's a lot of Zappa to wade through. Some of it would really cheer you up, I think. Over to you guys. I don't know, this is one of my favourite things about music schools. I work at one in England. Every year I meet, say, 100 new people, and they've all got different stuff in their record collection that I don't have. Well, on the condition that you like King Crimson, thank you. Cool. I remind someone of their favourite band, wicked. I admire them. I've not got a big stack of Crimson at home. I've got the one with the Night Watch on it. And it's got that bizarre thing. Fracture, I think it's called. I don't have any of the other stuff, but yeah, I love the sound of King Crimson. Also UK. It would be rude not to mention UK at this point. If you like your prog kind of spiky, a little bit aggressive. Yeah, that was a serious, clever band, that one. Yes is obviously great if you like it a little artier, but they don't have that demonic edge that the other guys we discussed have. I've been hearing a lot about those on tour. I haven't actually heard any Gentle Giant. I will remedy this. You should be at the mic, dude. Share this with the cameraman.
Extremely out there, go for Gentle Giant.
That's not a question. Cool.
I know you mentioned that compilation CD you did, and I know you mentioned that Bumblefoot was on that. And I wanted to know, because you do UK Guitar Magazine and whatnot, and I've seen him in there, and I see you guys kind of around each other. Do you guys work on anything together and snag licks from each other and stuff? Because I hear a lot of that in your playing as well, and in his as yours.
What, a lot of Bumblefoot?
Just the overall kind of style and some of the licks you do, and just wondering if you guys work on stuff together. Is there anything coming out?
Well, the good news is when this solo album of mine finally comes out, I've stopped saying if, I've started saying when it comes out, in the hope that that makes a difference. I did get Ron to do a guest solo on my country track, so I'm hoping what it will be is the first time anyone has ever played a distorted fretless guitar solo on one of those kind of up-tempo hillbilly songs. Yeah, Ron's wonderful.
I think the one thing I noticed in the playing was when you do a run, and then instead of just ending it there, you go up way high and do those bends, just end it, and that's what I was hearing in both of them. So, just kind of curious about that.
Oh, cool. Well, it's always good to meet a fellow Ron fan. Fantastic player, completely loopy, and that's the way we like it. But just as a development thing, I think Ron and I started trading tapes probably nearly 15 years ago. And I think that was the one guitar player that made me realise, look, there's no point trying to sound like everyone. Because I could do a passable Albert Lee, I could do a passable Paul Gilbert, and everyone I heard, I had to digest them and assimilate them. And then when I heard Ron, I just thought, okay, let's let Ron do Ron, and I'll go looking for what I should sound like. And not only is he a great player, but he kind of sorted me out musically as well. Just the idea that trying to cop every trick that every player has got is not necessarily the way forward.
Got time for one more?
I assume so. The big clock on the clubhouse wall says I can stop if I choose, but...
On the concept of fretless guitars, what would your take be on that?
I like them.
Yeah?
I've had a go several times now. I don't know, I almost gave up guitar for about 2 years. This is quite a while back, and just played fretless bass in a funk band, so the idea of not having frets doesn't scare me.
Yeah.
And I guess because one of the things I tried to work on years ago was not getting too locked into one box. That kind of thing. And those kind of slides work really well on a fretless. If most of your licks are just... if you try and play that on a fretless, it just sounds like a guitar, but worse. I like the idea that it's a fresh instrument and nobody really knows quite what you can do with it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering what your take... You mentioned the fretless guitar, so I was wondering what your take on that would be. I myself really enjoy the concept, and the sounds you get out of it, you really don't know what you can do with it, so, yeah.
I like the idea it's an alternative to slide playing in a way, and you think it sounds good until you really play slide. Actually, there's something I can share with you. I'm kind of getting more interested in slide playing now. Obviously, I have pansies action on this guitar because certainly at a clinic or something like that, everyone wants the tricks. Your best friend in the studio is cigarette papers, I think. Just stick him under there, drag it all the way up there, and then if you can start playing slide. Though it pains me to say it, I don't think a fretless guitar will ever have that kind of earthiness. There's something about just having a slide, and the high action is kind of integral there. I've seen a lot of people who buy a spare guitar and really jack the action way up at the bridge, and because it's down there that I think things really sound good. And if you look at a lap steel or something like that, the action's like that at the nut, and that's... the more you can kind of push in with the slide, I think the cooler it sounds, the more kind of filthy and primal it sounds, and that's what slide playing's all about, to my way of thinking. But with the fretless, I guess you've got a slide on each finger, and you can shred if you like. So, I don't know, the truth's probably somewhere between the two, isn't it? They're both refreshingly different approaches to an instrument that you think you know well. So, yeah, bring them all on, I say. Any more? In which case,
Well, other than Richie Kotzen, I'm not familiar with the Cornford amplifiers. Can you tell us a little about your selection of...
Cornford amps, hand-wired point-to-point stuff. They're hand-wired on the south coast of England by a small army of slaves. Think Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They've got these tiny people there with soldering irons. They're very laboriously and carefully put together, so they tend never to go wrong, which is nice. I like these in particular. Like I said, I'm not here to do the sales pitch, but what I like about them is they really bring out the character of whatever guitar you're playing. Hopefully you guys heard that. That guitar sounded nothing like this one, even though it's the same name on the headstock. Some of the higher gain amps, to my ears, kind of mask what's special about the guitar, or indeed about the player. These seem to bring out the nuances of everything. And they're not particularly easy amps to play through. You really have to fight them. So even with the gain all the way up, you can still play the same lick in a number of different ways and get a different reaction. I mean, that's actually an obscene amount of gain. But it's still kind of, the way I perceive it, it still handles like an older amp. It's got something vintage about it, but souped up. As opposed to not knocking this amp in the least. I'm not here to say negative things, but if you give me something like a dual rectifier, I come out in a nasty rash. I really can't get on with that kind of ultra-compressed amp, because it's trying to help you shred. It's the same with a lot of the higher gain settings on the pod, but I think something gets lost in the translation. So that's what I like about these. You mentioned Richie Kotzen. I've met a lot of guitar students who have this kind of problem with Richie Kotzen because he did a Shrapnel album when he was about 5 years old, and they assume he's still this kind of sweeping, tapping, musical shred guy, and in fact he's a fantastic blues guitar player, fantastic blues vocalist, and he plays guitar like he sings. You can tell it's the same guy. So Cornford would suit a player like him. Gary Moore's dabbled with them, Joe Satriani's dabbled with them. I heard a rumour that there was a Cornford on the Velvet Revolver album, and can we edit that bit out? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to know that. But you will hear more about them. Any other comments, or should I wrap things up? Yeah, let's wrap things up then. Thank you all for coming. I love you guys.